Hello, my name is Dan Dick, and you're listening to Tales from the Mennonite Heritage Archives, a show about people, places, and events from Mennonite history. Thanks for tuning in. Sara Dick works at the MHA. We chatted recently about what she learned while working on the collection of Helen Martens. Helen is the first known Mennonite woman to achieve a PhD in music. She was born in 1928 in Russia. Helen was the fourth child to parents Jacob Martens and Anna Dick. The family left the Soviet Union in 1929 and boarded a ship bound for Canada, eventually settling on their own farm in Sanford, Manitoba. Helen dedicated her life to music. Her studies and teaching work took her to the universities of Winnipeg, Waterloo, Minnesota, New York City, Ohio, England, and South Africa. She wrote books about Hutterite music and composer Felix Mendelssohn. I wanted to know what Sara learned from the Helen Martens collection. When Sara isn't working at the MHA, she studies history at Canadian Mennonite University. Here's our previously recorded conversation. Sara, how do your studies at CMU mesh with your work at the archives?
Well, I'm a history major, so right off the bat, there's a lot of general overlap in terms of interest and general understanding of the world. But more specifically, because CMU is a Mennonite institution, there are a lot of Anabaptist history and theology courses available to me that end up overlapping, sometimes in surprising ways, sometimes in obvious ways, with what I'm doing in the archives. And I don't have a specialty, I don't have a degree specialty in Mennonite history per se, but I do end up taking a lot of those courses because I think they're really interesting and, yes, because they're helpful.
You organized and described the Helen Martens materials. What did you learn from her?
Well, in a lot of ways, I feel like I learned about her sort of backwards. Right off the bat, the things that I was learning about on the surface were her research topics more than her personal life. And so through that, I sort of got a sideways look at who she was. One of her main areas of study was Felix Mendelssohn, an 1800s classical music composer. And another big area of study for her was on the Hutterite musical tradition. And so through those things and sort of seeing the work that she put into researching that, and eventually she published 3 books, one of which was sort of an altered dissertation. She published it in book form. The other 2 books were on Felix Mendelssohn and his life as a composer. And so through reading her work on those subjects, I feel like I learned about who she was, how dedicated she was. She was a hard worker. I think she really prized that part of her life. She thought it was quite important.
Tell me something about the musical tradition among Hutterites.
Ooh, there's so much. One of the things about being an archivist is you don't read every word of every page that you go through as you archive a collection, but it's also your prerogative to find an interesting piece and sit back and enjoy it for a little bit. That's just part of the job. And so one of the things that I found myself really, really reading when I was working with Helen's collection was her book on Hutterite music. And I learned that one of the things that the Hutterites who were writing songs in the 1500s did was when they were writing lyrics, they would make acrostics. And an acrostic is a literary device that you take the first letter or the first word of a paragraph or a stanza in this case, because it was a song. And when you put those letters or words together, they form another word or a message of some kind. And so hidden in the stanzas of these Hutterite songs are the names of the authors, the people writing the lyrics. Sometimes it includes their name and their profession or the recipient of the song. Sometimes there's a small greeting from one group of Hutterites to the other, hidden in the lyrics. And at one point, they even started composing lyrics to send blessings in and out of prison when they were being most heavily persecuted. I'm sure that their jailers wouldn't have appreciated passing, religious messages back and forth when it's the religious message that they were trying to suppress. So they would write out these songs, and in the acrostic hidden in the first word or letter, it would be, blessings of God be with you, and the reply, and also with you, please stay strong. They were really quite resourceful in using this musical tradition to also communicate with each other on a much more direct level. And I just think that's fascinating.
She also spent time teaching in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn about reading through those materials?
There wasn't actually a lot, and I was sort of surprised because to me that seems like such a big change. You know, she grew up here in Canada on the prairies. She, was teaching music and doing her doctoral work here in Ontario and in Manitoba. And she took a sabbatical and went to South Africa to teach for a semester there. I mean, that's already quite a big change. And I think it probably speaks to a love of traveling, perhaps, and maybe a little bit of adventure in there, a little bit of an adventurous spirit. But it was still centered around music. I think music was probably one of the pillars of her life, just based on how she lived and what she was always doing and always thinking about. And, she had a couple of pivot points, things that she centered herself around, but she wasn't afraid to sort of stretch the boundaries of that either and go to South Africa to teach for a semester, or to use her knowledge from working on Hutterite music traditions. Someone found her dissertation and asked her to be a cultural consultant on the set of Leonard Nimoy's film Holy Matrimony. That doesn't seem to follow at first glance, right? That a music professor would suddenly be a film consultant for Leonard Nimoy. But if she had the knowledge and if she could apply it in this way, even unexpectedly, she was all for it.
I did quickly shuffle through her box of materials, and I found that she did actually keep a number of letters from students from South Africa that all wanted study help from her.
Yeah. From those, I got the sense that, she was quite invested in her students. Some of the letters maybe told me that she could be a strict teacher. She had high standards. She wanted her students to be the best they could and learn as much as they could, but that, she kept up this correspondence with people, that she was willing to help them get there and to push them to be the best that they could be.
What people choose to keep or discard can often tell us something about them. From Helen's collections, what can we interpret and learn about her personal life?
There aren't a lot of strictly what we might think of as personal items in her files. One thing that really stuck out to me was she had kept a translation that she had done of her mother's diary from German to English. And the reason that it stuck out to me was that it's almost the only one of its kind in the whole collection. Much more of what we have is the research that she dedicated towards her books. And so, to me, I think that sort of just shows, where her focus was, where her pride was, what she thought, this is the thing that I love doing, and this is the thing that I want to remember having done. Other things that she did in her life that other people might have really been interested in. She founded the Mennonite Children's Choir in 1967, and I didn't learn that from her collection. I learned that from reading an obituary, I think it was, in the newspaper as I was doing a little bit more research to contextualize what I was looking at. And that's not something I would have learned from her collection because there was no mention of it in her files, in her papers. So there were some things that, of course, she put effort into that choir and she conducted it for many years. But I think her research was really what was important to her.
Your response raises two additional questions for me. One is that your comment about seeing that little fact in her obituary shows that people who do the kind of work that you do look outside the box of materials that are donated in describing and helping to flesh out those descriptions that you write.
Yes, definitely.
The other I wonder if you can just comment on it. You said that it's really rare to have a woman's diary in the archive, her mother's diary. Why did you say it was rare? Is it because she's a woman who kept a diary, or for what reason did you think it's very unusual?
No, I should clarify. It was unusual in Helen Martens' collection. She didn't have a lot of family-related documents or anything like that, and so to find something as personal as a diary in Helen's collection was what stuck out to me.
Do we know from her collection if she was ever married or had children?
Her collection certainly doesn't say anything of the sort, but even the research that I did outside the box, as you say, didn't indicate any sort of partner or children. No, she was an independent woman, I think, was the sense that I got.
Why and for whom do you think Helen's story is important?
Yeah, I think there are a few obvious groups of people who would be interested in her story right off the bat. She was the first known Mennonite woman to earn a PhD in music, and so people who are interested in the lives of Mennonite women, in trailblazers perhaps, might be drawn to her dissertation as an example of the work that she had to do to get there, or for her dissertation topic itself, for Hutterite music traditions, if scholars are interested in that line of study and they're looking to expand their knowledge or to go back and do some research. And the same goes for Felix Mendelssohn. Most of her boxes are filled with research on Felix Mendelssohn. So if someone is looking for a good source of information on his life, her collection is one of the ones to find, I think. But one of the things that I love about the archives that I learned with Helen's collection specifically is that you never know who is going to find a collection and think, this is exactly what I was looking for, and for what reason. In Helen's collection, like I said, she had a lot of stuff on Felix Mendelssohn, and as sort of a periphery to that research, she dove a lot into the life of a woman named Delphine von Schauroth, who was a contemporary of Mendelssohn's. She was an incredible pianist and a composer in her own right, but she didn't make it into the history books quite the same way that Mendelssohn did. And so not a lot about her life is known even to this day. And when I was working on her collection, I understood pretty quickly that, all right, this is peripheral to her main body of work. And I didn't think that it was useless information, far from it, but I think I sort of unconsciously integrated that into my understanding of the collection and expected it to stay that way. I expected Delphine von Schauroth to sort of stay a footnote in her research and to not pop up again, except perhaps for me, if I recognized the name somewhere else, there would be that little ping of familiarity. Look what I know. But a year or two ago, a scholar contacted the archives, I'm told, and was really eager to confirm that Helen Martens had made photocopies of a couple of music scores that von Schauroth had composed, and was looking to integrate those music scores into their own research. And I never would have predicted that while working on the collection, but it just kind of goes to show that in an archive, every scrap of information is going to end up being important to someone sometime, and I think that's really cool. So I can give you a few ideas of how Helen's collection might be useful, but I wouldn't claim that's an exhaustive list. And that's one of the things that I love most about what I do, is that I will always be surprised about how people use the information that I work with.
Many thanks to Sara for taking the time to share what she's learned about the fascinating life of music scholar Dr. Helen Martens. Helen died in Winnipeg in 2020 at the age of 92. Her documents have already been accessed by a scholar in Germany and a music publisher in Ontario. The MHA also has the 3 books that Helen wrote. Visit mharchives.ca to see a few photos of Helen Martens' records.
Hello, I'm Conrad Stace, the archivist at the Mennonite Heritage Archives. Your donations help preserve and share stories like the one you just heard. To send a gift, visit our website at mharchives.ca and click on Support, or give us a call at 204-560-1998. Thanks also to our partners, Canadian Mennonite University, the Centre for Transnational Mennonite Studies, Mennonite Church Canada, and Golden West Radio.
In an upcoming episode, I'll speak with sisters Marjorie and Carol Jansen about their great-grandfather Jacob Clausen. Their family has records and diaries that incredibly date back to the 1600s. Thanks to the Tales team of Conrad Stace, Graham Unruh, and Kaylee Dick for their work on the program. Tales from the Mennonite Heritage Archives will be back soon with more stories about people, places, and events from Mennonite history. Thanks for listening.